Seafarer, the ship sim, is going to release on the 7th of October 2025, and it will release in an EA state. And despite that EA state, the game is already a very impressive title. We know that multiplayer is coming in the future, and so too is a more realistic implementation of the existing arcade, which they refer to as casual mode. This video focuses on what I think needs to be changed or included in order to make that realistic mode 10 times better than the casual mode currently is. It is releasing as an early access title, so obviously bugs do exist in the game. Some logic-based bugs, like the way that fuel is consumed, a major issue with the game that needs fixing immediately, and numerous other early access bugs like spawn issues, camera issues, many missing audio items and audio issues. But I'm not going to focus on those. I'm talking about USP core features that don't currently exist in the game, or partly exist in the game, or could be introduced relatively easily based on what already exists. So the first thing I would change, if I was project lead on this game, is fuel consumption. We need to have realistic fuel consumption. What we have now is nothing more than stupid and irritating. I would introduce an RPM on the engines, which, although running slower, becomes more cost effective. You use less fuel, and it puts less stress on the engine, so they break less often. This of course will be counteracted with the fact that you need to get your deliveries to certain locations by a certain time. The second thing I would work on, and I'm sure they're going to do this personally, I think they need to improve the physics on the ships. Right now they're very basic but functional. Things like a damaged hull should equal water coming aboard the boat. Now, bilge pumps should be turned on to manage a certain amount of it, but eventually, if it isn't fixed or if it gets worse, then a mayday call will need to be made and the ship must reach harbour or risk sinking. And that could ruin your company, especially if your insurance doesn't cover the costs. Thirdly, I would work on the character movement. Character movement currently lacks three things, in my humble opinion, that would vastly improve realism. The ability to jump, swim and climb. This would allow us to walk about on the harbour, then we could inquire about jobs, contracts, purchase goods, repairs for the boat, food and water. I'll come on to that a bit later as well. Yes, indeed, I would very much like to see the need of a person or a character to sleep, eat, drink and even defecate, because these are things that mix up a day. You know, if you need to go down below and get a drink, that's 5-10 minutes of doing something other than waiting for something to happen, because sailing, as wonderful as it is and as incredible as it can be, there's not a lot to do, which is why they introduced fast travel into this game. But I think you're missing an opportunity there. You're missing the experience of actually sailing. And yeah, so it takes you an hour to get from A to B. But in that hour, in a multiplayer environment, you've got 4 mates on a boat, you've all got to eat, drink, sleep. That means you're taking shifts. Sometimes you're steering the boat, someone else is steering the boat whilst they're having a kip. You know, there's so much could be done. And if you're playing in single player mode, then, you know, whilst you're having a kip, time could just skip. And that could, in theory, sort of be like a time skip capability. And the final thing, in fact probably the most important thing, are the career and the current game economics. Now I put those two together because they are linked, as you will see as I discuss this. So the career desperately needs work. I've been playing an early access pre-release version, so maybe what I'm about to say is already planned. If not, then I urge you to contact the devs via Discord or whatever medium and request that these changes, if you want to see them, get implemented, because otherwise the very vocal arcadey types will absolutely dominate the conversation and will get nothing at all. So after the first tutorial, you get to choose your starter boat, and in doing so, an association. You get to pick between harbour patrol or freight ferries, and I expected to be doing just one of those for a period of time, until such time as I opt to work for somebody else. Unfortunately, that's not how it works currently. Each harbour generates random jobs and you have to pick from them, otherwise you have nothing to do. What I would love to see is a shift. So if, for example, you start off as a harbour patrol officer, then you should have a shift. You start at 8 in the morning, you finish at 8 at night, and in that period of time, AI ships will come in and leave the port, and you need to check them and you need to inspect them, the same as you do now, except yourself doing it off your own back. Or maybe sometimes you get calls coming in from the office that ask you to go and do a particular job. There's so many things could be done with that. The captain is over here, he needs taking to his ship, which is over there. Can you pick him up from the harbour point A and take him to harbour point B? Things like that. You could have debris in the water which you need to lasso and drag to safety. You could have, I mean, there are so many things that you could have. The smaller ships that come in, maybe one of their engines have run out of fuel or broken. You go and tow them in on your little rib. We've already got tow capability in the game. Much of what I'd like to see is already partially in the game already. So after the first tutorial, you don't get to work as a whatever it is you've picked. You have to pick one of these random jobs, most of which require you to go and sail someone else's boat on their behalf. Very occasionally you will get a campaign mission or a job that you can do on your own vessel, but 99% of the time it's somebody else's boat, somebody else's job. So I don't understand why you get a boat in the first place. It seems silly to me that you start a career with a boat. It's a lazy, terribly lazy mistake in my humble opinion. There's no persistence in the game, there's no economy in the game, and as such there's no real long-term immersion, and certainly very little in the way of realism and simulation. I want to have a simulated career, and for most of us that begins as a deckhand on another person's ship, earning a wage per hour or earning a percentage based on what they make. Then over time you will work hard, take the necessary qualifications and progress your way up the ladder until perhaps you are the captain. Then at that point you can branch out, take a loan, start your own company, buy your own ship or ships. Then you will start to bid for contracts, employ crew, and see how much money you can make or lose, because as we all know, in real life, nothing ever stays smooth sailing. Stuff can always go wrong or break. Now, as I mentioned, everything in this video is already partially in the game, almost in the game, or could be added relatively easily. Situations like the ship that hits the bridge and sets fire to a whole area. At the end of that mission, I don't want it to just disappear and the whole thing to be forgotten. That is not immersive. What would be immersive is if that ship has to stay there for a couple of weeks. I mean, bearing in mind we have a clock and a night and day system, we can actually wait for a couple of weeks. But during that time, whilst the ship is being moved, perhaps you could get involved as a tow ship. Maybe you could get on board and start cutting down parts of the ship so that it can be moved without knocking the bridge down. You know, there could be a reason for that being there. There's suddenly an economic demand for more ballast and more wood and more bricks to be taken to that particular harbour because they've got to repair everything that was damaged and broken. That is immersive. That is like real life career type stuff. But before anything like that can happen, we need to have a working economy. We need to have realistic prices for goods and contracts and expenses, and no more of this buying a cargo ship for 3,000 coins. You earn more than that in a single job right now, and ships in real life are not cheap. They're not cheap to buy, and they're even more expensive to look after. To be honest with you, a bank loan is likely the only realistic way that someone will be able to buy their first ship. Then, if you're a good manager and you're good at keeping contracts on time and you get the respect of companies and they put their trust in you and have long-term contracts with you, then you can make enough money to have 4 or 5 ships perhaps, maybe even more.
There you go. We made it after all. Now the ship just needs to be unloaded and our mission will be complete.
So obviously in order for this to work, each port will have to have at least one company that produces goods and needs them to be shipped out to another port. Now Seafarer already has AI ships following routes between ports, so why not just attach the economy behind that? It's not a huge bit of work to get these two things working together. As an example, an AI ship arrives at a port. They radio in for a docking space, but they have to anchor up and wait for a day because there's no spaces available. Once given a docking space, then they will need a certain amount of time to unload, refuel and replenish stocks or make repairs. During this time, they can obtain a contract at a fixed rate. So this AI boat takes contracts at X amount of pounds per X amount of weight, something like that, or X amount of crates, whatever it is. They will try and take that contract. Whilst they're there getting their repairs and replenishing stock and moving stuff around, and you own a company and the correct type of boat, that would be your opportunity to secure that same contract, perhaps at a better price, or you'll offer to get it there quicker. If you haven't managed to agree a price before that ship is ready to leave, then that potential job is gone. But at the same time, if you don't have a company, that will be your opportunity to work on that AI ship to earn money. So even if you don't own a company yet, you can work as a deckhand, securing crates as they're loaded on, cleaning the decks, simple, boring jobs. But a job that pays you a wage and also gets you to move around the map to different harbours where different opportunities become available to you. Then, certain harbours should provide the opportunity to obtain qualifications, at your own expense of course, and that should enable you to get better jobs on board other people's AI ships that pay more money. You can get a license to be a first mate, or a crane handler, or an engineer. Then your job experience on each journey will be varied, and yes, at times it will be boring, which is why I would like to see the human needs facility introduced. Eating, drinking, sleeping and defecating. This is what life at sea is like. You need to go and buy the food to put in the freezer, which will then be taken out and cooked. Now I know this particular part is a massive extension on what's there, but it is a simulated realism of life. This is what life is like aboard ships, working on container ships and things like that. It doesn't just have to be container ships that have this feature. If you buy a tugboat, then you charge boats probably per ton to tow them into space. But should you accidentally crack that boat or damage that boat in some way, then you're going to be liable and your insurance is going to have to cover you, or you're going to have to pay out. These are the things that make long-term simulation possible. What we've got now is a very sort of short-term idle gameplay implementation that will just get boring quickly for arcade players and sim players alike. Now, whilst you're travelling aboard, I would like to see other things. I'm certain that Seafarer is already planning slips and falls and medical emergencies, but whilst you're on board an AI ship, or even your own ship, imagine if a fire breaks out. Fires are already available in the game, and there are fire extinguishers all over the boat, so this may be something that they're planning. But what a fantastic experience that would be with your teammates, with your multiplayer crew. You're trying to steer the boat, but the boat's on fire. If you don't get the fire out, the boat's going to sink, or you're all going to die. That's very exciting. Again, if somebody slips and falls, something which I think is possibly already coming, that person should now be bedridden. So you now have to cover their work as well as your work. Floating debris could cause severe damage to the prop or the hull. And if the hull does get damaged, you've now got to monitor the water ingress and get your bilge pumps working. Perhaps the engine stops and the electrics go out, and you as an engineer need to figure out why that happened, and then you've got to fix it. You've got to hope that you've got the right parts to fix the problem. But whilst you're doing that, the ship's got no propulsion or steering. Hell, I would go so far as to let cargo fall overboard if you haven't secured it properly. I would let the whole ship sink and require a mayday call, and potentially everyone needs to abandon the ship into the lifeboats and try and get back to safety. I would certainly allow waves that are so big that your ship cannot progress, but instead you'll need to divert to a safe harbour. That may mean you take, a hit on the amount of money that you get for the cargo delivery you're trying to make. But that again is realism. That's realistic. That's what I want to see. So everything I mentioned in this video is already nearly implemented in Seafarer, and what exists already could be vastly improved. I'm talking about the engineering side of things primarily, but every aspect of the game could be more immersive and more detailed. With these changes in place, we could eventually progress to the point where we can buy our own boat. Now we need the economics in game to be readily available. We're talking about the cost of insurance, the cost of parts, the price of docking, employees' wages, the cost of lifting your boat out of the water in order to get repairs. This all needs to be factored in, and it's so possible to do all of this in less than a year, which, by chance, is the amount of time that they have allotted to to EA development. Everything I have suggested is possible based on what they have already developed and I have seen in the game. This could easily be done, and it would take this arcade game and make it a sim game, a really immersive simulation experience. You don't have to take out the really simple, really basic arcadey version of the game. That doesn't have to happen. It just has to be a switch that turns all of the economic stuff on and gives you all of the career abilities and options that I've mentioned. I mean, imagine how much more playability the game I have described here would have over a game that just produces the same jobs every third job I've done has been the same as one I've already done. Now, I grant you it's early access, the game hasn't even released yet. They may come up with hundreds of these jobs, but they're all just going to be repetitive jobs. It's not going to be a true flowing economic system. And that's what I would love to see. Thanks for watching. Please do let me know your thoughts on this. I really desperately want to hear what you think. And also, let me know if you're a casual player or an arcade player or a sim player.
Next time, I promise.
What level of immersion are you looking for? And as such, where is your cutoff point? Where does it become too realistic? Where does it become too simplified? Because these are literally the splitting points on sim games like these. They're either too easy or they're too hard, or at least that's the argument I hear. But anyone, to be honest, who says they're too hard, I'm sorry, I don't really agree with you. I think you're too lazy. But don't get upset now. I do grant you there is definitely an argument about time availability, how much time you have available. You know, some people do want a casual gameplay experience so that they can progress through their game and not have a simulated experience. But then my argument to that is, don't call it a sim. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Goodbye for now.
The jobs aren't letting up at all, and I could really use you here. We're going to go far, you and me. This is just the beginning. We sail the seas, no games are played, just nature's breeze. Educating sailors through every wave, windshield lifting is the life we crave. Feel the pull of the tide, so true and real. In this nautical dance, let the waters heal. Sailing for real in the arms of the deep. Simulated journeys where the secrets keep. Loyal to the queen under skies so blue. Brewing cups of tea in this life we pursue. Full English breakfast fueling the quest as we navigate waters, feeling truly blessed. With each crash of the wave, we embrace the thrill. Simulating reality, it gives us a chill. True wind in our sails, we ride the swell. Like the stories of sailors we know so well. Educate and simulate, living fearlessly. The spirit of England flows within you and me. Raise the anchor high, let our journey begin. In this soulful escape, the adventure we win. Sailing for real in the arms of the deep. Simulated journeys Feel the heat of the sun. Let the stars be our guide in the embrace of the ocean with nothing to hide. Oh. Sim UK reviews, painting skies so bold. Every tide unraveled, every story told. From the cliffs of Dover to the shores of Bright, our passion ignites like the morning light. With tea in our hands and the wind at our backs, we sail through existence with no need for hacks. Ultimate realism, it's the path that we roam with hearts open wide. The ocean's our home, so here